This is the podcast that we ask our guests from in front and behind the camera, how did they get their foot in the door? What was the key to unlocking their success? What's their story?
Before he became a familiar face, he showed up in iconic TV shows such as The Incredible Hulk, Taxi, The Dukes of Hazzard, and The A-Team. But it was when he was working on the set of Spacehunter that he met Ivan Reitman and Harold Ramis, which led him to be cast as one of the 4 iconic Ghostbusters. With over an astonishing 250 credits, which include Basketball Diaries, Congo, one of my personal favourites, The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, The Crow and Miss Congeniality. His latest is the highly anticipated Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. We chat about coming to terms with fame, what Ghostbusters has meant to him over the years, and how to have longevity as an actor. Our guest today is actor ERNIE HUDSON.
I love this town!
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
It's going good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all good. Very clear, very clear. So I'm
Good.
just putting the cat on my lap because he's making loads of noise and this might just calm him down a bit. How's it going, man?
Good.
Thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for taking the time. It's things are great, with me it's a good time and yeah, no, things are good. I got nothing
Yeah,
but
I mean, seeing all
yeah.
the stuff you've got not only out but coming out, and actually doing my homework on this episode and seeing, I can't believe how many credits you've got. It's insane. You've got to be in the top 50 actors in the world that has got as many credits. It's absolutely insane. It's over 250. Am I correct? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there are a couple that when I first started out, I'm not sure how IMDb missed those, but I don't know if it matters, but yeah, I'm one of those actors who I work. So over the years, having a family, it was important for me to work. So that's kind of where my focus has always been. And sometimes, and I've been very fortunate to be consistent over a period of time. So um, yeah, that's why it's about the job. It's about when you start out, you end up saying a prayer because you're so excited to be able to do what you love to do, and you ask for certain things. And unfortunately, I didn't ask for the money or the awards. I just asked for work. So I got a lot of work, and I've been very, I just been very fortunate, I guess. People keep hiring me. And, um,
That's amazing. I mean, that's all you can ask for, and I mean, some of the for me as well. This is a big deal for me because you are a huge part of my childhood, not only with Ghostbusters but the Congo, and like, there's just so many films. Up until this day, I mean, there's projects that you've done that I'm just like, I can't believe I'm getting to chat to you and talk about your career. I mean, it's an amazing thing. So again, thank you for taking the time. And I do want to wind back and ask you how this career began, because looking back at your credits, if I'm right in thinking, if IMDb is at all accurate,
right.
you started out, and one of your first roles was, it started sort of mid 70s. Would that be correct?
Yeah. I think 73, somewhere in there. I did a movie called Lead Belly.
Yeah.
I've been working in Detroit and did some bit parts or on television, local television, film, but the first real film credit. And I did a lot of theater from 66 until 73. It was even actually later. I was doing a lot of theater, just local theater, regional theater, and but then I got Gordon Parks, Gordon who did Shaft and Sounder, and he was just amazing man. But we did this a movie based on Huddy Ledbetter, the blues singer, and I got this part. I thought it was really a big role. Now I look back, it's probably about 5 minutes on film, but and that kind of started. I did a little work, and then I left to go back to school, and then finally came back out and started working around 76, 77, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm. And how did that love of acting and performing, where does that come from? Was there someone in your family, or how did that begin for you?
Well, I grew up in this, which is probably one of the poorest towns in America, a little town called Benton Harbor, Michigan, right on the coast of Lake Michigan. And nobody in my family had any connections with anything. What we were expected to do after finishing school, if you finish school, there wasn't a lot of possibilities. But I left town. I got married. We had a kid, and I got married really young. And then I went to Detroit. And while trying to find a place to do anything in Detroit, I stumbled on theater. And I thought, oh my God, this is so amazing. And how can you do that? I mean, if it's at all possible.
Mm.
And then while I was in college, I was already in college at that point, but I took an acting class. And when I walked out on stage for the very first time, we met on the stage. I just knew that this was kind of where I belonged. This kind of fit, and I could do this. And so some people say, well, you're very blessed to be able to do what you love. But I kind of look at this is what I can do because so many things I tried, were jobs I worked to take care of my family. I was very bad at. It's like, when you think you're going to be fired at any moment, as soon as they realize you have no clue. But with theater, I thought, this makes sense. I can do this, and yeah, and that's when I just started working. I started working from that point on, and I've always managed to make a living.
Mm.
I was talking to Joy Montaigne, Joey Pantoliano, Tim Daly. We're all having dinner years ago, and they were talking about different jobs they worked to support themselves while they were, starting out. And from the time I sort of discovered theater and said that prayer, I've always made my living as an actor. I've never had to work outside of, now some years are lean years, but uh, never lean in terms of being excited about what I could do. This is what I've done for the last 50 plus years.
Mm. That's amazing. That's incredible that you've been able to consistently work. And as you say, there's always going to be those lean years. I mean, every actor goes through that. I myself am an actor, and there's
Yeah.
been a few lean years. I'm going to say haven't worked quite as much as you, but in the time where early on when and you're trying to build up your credits and you're getting those stepping stones, did you have any sort of hobbies or coping mechanisms that you would kind of put into place in between those jobs that would keep you kind of sane in between work?
I think, I always said that if I'm not working on stage or in front of the camera, then I need to be taking classes. Well, I've never had to really take a lot of classes. Early on, I found there's a community, as a theater community, and it
Mm.
was really important to kind of be a part of that. But probably for me, and I don't recommend this for anybody else, but I got married really young. I was 18, she was 16, right out of high school. We both got into college. She eventually ended up getting her PhD, and I uh, ended up in theater. But um, the marriage ended very early, and we had two sons, and the kids came to live with me. And so when I was trying to get started in theater and trying to get started with the acting, came out to LA, I had my two kids.
Mm.
And there was something about wanting to set an example to say to them, life, you can dream and achieve your dreams. It seemed irresponsible to not go for my own dreams. And so they were always the motivating factor. We had to eat, we had to pay the rent, I had to keep transportation, I had to keep the phone on in case someone called. I had to make sure they had everything they needed to school clothes, all that. And it was all on me.
Mm.
So when I'd go in an audition, it was I need this job, and what do I need to do to convince you that I'm, you know? And it was a time when there weren't many roles for black actors, um, but I and a lot of friends took on that cause. It was a lot of people sort of gathering and trying to protest the situation. But I always felt that I just need one job. What I mean? I just need a job. This job. I'm here now. And I would go into an audition, and if I always had to read back in those days, and if I didn't feel it went well, and they'd say, "Well, thank you, Ernie, for coming in," I go, "No, no, no. Let's do this again." I knew that I had to change the mood in the room. They had to see me, because sometimes you go on audition, they're kind of focused somewhere else, and you're not going to get this job. But somehow, because I had to feed the family, and I had no backup. I had no. The mom was in another state, so she couldn't really help. And these are, the kids were like 7 and 10, so I really had to just dig deep, and it wasn't really for me. Your kid comes and says, he showed, Dad, check this out, and he'll show you a picture of a bike, and then, wow, it's got this, and it's got handlebars, and he's really excited about it. And he said, "Can I?" And I go, "Well, things are really tight. There's this bill and that bill, and I can't really." But then you see the disappointment in their face, and you got to get the bike.
Yeah.
So somehow I got to find a way to get the bike, and I'm very thankful, because I certainly feel like I always did, and to provide a home for them. I just didn't want to give them the excuse for not being able to achieve whatever it is that they wanted. But that was always a motivating factor. And um, the downside is I don't think I deliberately chose roles. I never felt like there was roles that were written specifically for me.
Mm.
I had to sort of go in, and even though I could read a script and say there's probably somebody else who might be better for this, but I got to figure out a way to tell this story to make this character believable, and I have to make the adjustment.
Mm.
And during that time, I had friends who went on and were very successful, but they found a way to just focus on certain kind of roles that they felt were right,
Mm.
or they got the studios to sort of write for them to accommodate their personalities. So I had to be a little bit, if it was funny, I got to find a way to make somebody laugh. If it's sad, I got to make somebody cry. I got to, whatever that is. And and it was very hard for me to plan too far ahead, because everything was always immediate.
Mm.
And I don't think that's necessarily a good thing, but I think if you're trying to, keep the rent paid and do those basic things, right now it's about this job, and how do I do the best I can under the circumstances. I know it was a long answer, but the
I,
kids were probably the biggest motivator. You know,
I'm sure
uh,
I can imagine that must be. I haven't got kids yet, but I
right,
can imagine that when they're at the table waiting for their dinner and there's no food on the table, you've got to be the one going out there and getting it. So I
yeah.
understand that must be tough. And props to you for sticking with it and obviously until you got your big break. I mean, I guess people probably presume Ghostbusters is like your big thing, but I was looking back. Was it Space Hunter that was your first kind of big film?
Yeah, I think Spacehunter was the first kind of big studio film, even though Lead Belly was Paramount, so that was, but the first film that I felt like I kind of broke through. I did a movie called uh, it was with John Candy, and honestly, that I can remember, I can memorize reams of dialogue, but names, I don't know. I can't remember the name of that, but some of the other movies were good, but Space Hunter was the first time I felt like, okay, we're um, God, I can't remember the name of that movie, which is very embarrassing. But uh, yeah, that was kind of with was Peter Weller, and it was and Ivan Reitman was producing that movie. He kind of the original director they fired and they brought Ivan in,
Ah.
and I think Harold Ramis was one of the writers he brought in. So I met those guys. This is the year before Ghostbusters, so it wasn't a lot of money, but it was a fun character.
Hmm.
Um, and um, and when the movie was over, actually, I saw Ivan Reitman on an elevator. I was visiting a friend in a hospital, and he told me that he was doing this movie, Ghostbusters, which I hadn't heard of it until that point. And but he quickly said, "But there's nothing in it for you." And I,
You're like,
so
great.
yeah, I didn't even ask about it. Like, well, thank you so much. It's and then I found out that there was a part, but and it was seeing people, but they refused to see me. And I think the reason was the character I played in Spacehunter was he was kind of bigger than life, kind of boisterous. My head was shaved, and I think I spoke in a low register, just that's who that guy was, and that guy wouldn't fit in Ghostbusters. And I realized that maybe he didn't understand that I wasn't that guy. I felt that was right for that movie. And it took me probably 3 4 months before they finally saw me. I mean, every friend, getting auditions. Um, Hispanic friends of mine were going up to audition for the part, and then finally I got an audition. But I got the script, and I read the script, and I thought, oh my God, I got it. I have to do this role. Um, and so I went in, and I think every act out there knows. I'm sure you know. Sometimes you go in, you do your best, but you feel you could have done something better. You kind of come away feeling, but sometimes it's like drop the mic. You know what I mean? It's like now you want to throw the script down and say now get somebody to do that. And it was one of those moments. I just felt it was. And Winston, it was a different character than actually we ended up in the movie because they ended up cutting the part way down. But I just felt in that audition, I just nailed it. Um, and I went home waiting to hear back, and I did hear a couple of days later they wanted me to come in um, to be put on camera, and I went back, and then uh, they said they wanted me to come in again. So I went in like 3 or 4 times to be put on camera, which I'm like, well, we just put this on camera, so but it was just dragging out forever. And so by the time I got Ghostbusters, I couldn't even celebrate because the kids like we were all kind of like, oh, okay, this is taking forever. But finally, I got the role, and yeah, and I'm very thankful. 40 years later, that it kind of worked out, but it was frustrating.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but,
That I mean, that film, obviously you will have heard this so many times over the period of your career, but it's so influential and it became part of kind of I can't even think of anything more iconic. It's kind of, the song, the outfits, everything. I went to a Halloween party several times over the years as a
yeah,
Ghostbuster, and it's part of the psyche now, isn't it? It's like this kind of
yeah,
iconic image. And at the time when you were making it, did you ever think that it would? Did you have? I mean, you said the script was obviously great and everything else, but did you
yeah,
ever have an
yeah.
inkling that it would be what it became?
No, I don't think, we do these things, these movies, and you think, well, I've done movies that I thought, whoa, when this comes out, man, this is going to be, and then it does nothing. And then I do movies that I thought, when I did The Hand Rocks the Cradle, I thought nobody's going to ever look at this thing. I mean, it's like, really, come on. But you do your best work and you hope, and then the movie came out and did very well. So
I'm a
it's always
big
hard
fan
to
of that
tell.
film. Love that
Yeah,
film.
yeah. I see people now who come up and say, "Oh, that role in The Hand Rocks the Cradle," um, but it's very hard. And when we did Ghostbusters, now I wasn't a Saturday Night Live fan. I didn't, watch the show. I had other things. And so Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, I really wasn't that familiar. I knew who they were, but I wasn't that familiar with their work. I remember on the elevator, Ivan said, "I'm doing this movie with Bill and Danny," and I don't know, that's great. So when we did the movie, I met the guys, and they are Harold. I mean, they are extraordinary, were extraordinary, and so I felt like, okay, this movie it'll open number one at the box office and it'll do great. But movies will open big and then they'll last for a few weeks.
Mhm.
And then the next movie comes along and then that's over. You may see it on late night TV or something. But something about Ghostbusters just kept going on. It didn't have an ending. The song just kept being played, and then after a year, it's like they're still, singing the Ghostbusters song. I'm on the street, people are, and then 5 years went by and people were showing up in their jumpsuits. I'm like, wow, that's kind of weird, And then 10 years went by, and then 15 years went by, and then 20 years went by. And so it's kind of been around and people sort of grew up with it. And then it became, for me, interesting because it became sort of a family. I met, kids who said, it's the first movie I ever saw with my dad. I was at a convention and there was a lady who she was with her son and his family, but the son had a 10-month-old baby and he had a Ghostbuster jumpsuit on with a little name tag. And it was so cute. It was perfect. And I thought, wow, where'd you find this jumpsuit? And she said, I made it for him when he was a baby. And now his baby's wearing it. And
That's
and
great.
and and then at 20, 25, and finally 30 years later, they decide, well, maybe we should make another movie. I'm like, yeah, well, we probably should have figured that out a few years ago. But the fans have been really just really somehow connected in a very I don't know spiritual way, and I've met, and now I mean I still, people will come up with their ectomobiles. They turn their car into a Ghostbuster, and that's I'm very appreciative, and I just find them extraordinary. That wherever I go, even out of the country, I mean, they're
Mhm.
Ghostbuster fans. I don't think I've ever gone any place that I haven't seen somebody in a Ghostbuster jumpsuit.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
That's amazing. It
yeah.
must be amazing, but also kind of almost, I suppose, if you're not expecting it as well, that level of fame must have been a little bit terrifying when it first sort of happened.
Yeah, well, that summer we opened, it opened number one, and suddenly it just stayed at that number one spot. I think Prince's Purple Rain, I think that's the one that knocked it out of first place. I may be wrong on that, but I think it hung around for a long time. And I was living in an apartment in this neighborhood, um, and then people began to come up to you. Now, I didn't really make very much money on the movie, certainly not enough money to move. So I'm living in this apartment. But if you went to, say, the grocery store on the corner, someone would say, "Whoa, you see that movie Ghostbusters? Yeah, the actor Ernie Hudson. He lives right down
Oh
the street,
no.
1476." And so we'd have people coming to our door. They'd get in the building, knock on the door, you open the door, and it's 10 o'clock at night, and
Oh
some
wow.
guy's there with his family going, "Oh, we just got here from Ohio, and I can't believe it's you," and wow, and trying to sort of come in there. So I just wasn't used to fans. I think with some of the work I've done, I've had people come up and say, "I like your work," but they always kept a respectful distance. But
Mm.
with Ghostbusters, it's almost like the personal space began to, I'd go out to get in my car and someone would be like there with some pictures or something and insisting that I sign it, even though I'm running late for something. That became a little bit much. But then again, like I said, I hadn't made a lot of money, and I used to tell the joke that I came to Hollywood to become rich and famous. I never realized you could be poor and popular. So, so I signed a lot of grocery bags at the the grocery store, but it doesn't equate to money.
Check out the Patreon at patreon.com/life in film, where you'll get episodes early and uncut, amongst other treats. And don't forget to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy this episode, please leave us a positive rating. Add us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Life in Film Pod, and find our video episodes on YouTube by searching EllIOT James Langridge Life in Film. Essentially, please like and subscribe everything. It makes a huge difference. Thank you. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Do you work in the film industry? Are you freelance? Or perhaps you have a 9 to 5? No matter what you do, mental health affects us all. I struggled early on in my career with the uncertainty of if and when I would ever work again, struggling to pay my bills, or simply with anxiety. Don't know about you, but being an actor, it's very important for me to maintain structure in the downtimes, and I found not only exercise, but talking to someone for me was a game changer. And so Life in Film has partnered with BetterHelp to provide you with access to the largest online therapy service in the world. And it can all be done from the comfort of your own home, from a phone, tablet or laptop. No commute, cutting down travel costs, and most importantly, it's affordable. With over 1,000 therapists in the UK, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise in mental health. If you need someone to talk to and you're thinking of giving therapy a go, BetterHelp is a great option. And being a listener of the podcast, you get 10% off. That's 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. That's betterhelp.com/lifeinfilm. And back to the show.
And then I call it the Ghostbuster curse because after the movie came out, even though it was everywhere, the song was everywhere, work shut down. I thought that would be the opening door.
Wow.
And then it just went the opposite way. I mean, even Columbia, that produced the movie, I couldn't even get an audition at Columbia. And they were doing Soldier Story, which was predominantly Black cast. They were doing some other, but it was like, no, it was. And that part was weird because I was expecting that would be the jump off, and then things until the Hand Rocks the Cradle, like 3 years later. No, after first Ghostbusters, until I did a movie with Nick Nolte called Weeds.
Yeah.
Now, as an actor, and because I had children, I have to work. And so I just started doing a lot of TV. I did probably, I don't know, I was literally doing a different television show every week, from Taxi to Bosom Buddies to One Day at a Time to different show. I was doing all those shows to fill in. But I really wanted to get into movies, and then Nick Nolte had a movie called Weeds, and I just went in determined to get this part. And I remember in the audition, suddenly they said, "Oh well, this guy has to sing, and can you sing?" And so I just kind of made up a song on the moment, and but I got that part. And after I got Weeds, I worked back to back. I literally left a set of Weeds to go to work on I think Leviathan, but I was working, and then until the second Ghostbusters came out, and once that happened, everything shut down again.
No,
it was like,
man.
Yeah, and I never knew why, because I thought, well, is it? I still can't tell you why that was for those two movies. But then I found other ways. I did some commercials, which I'd never done before. I did some voiceover stuff. The things outside of the movies that I found I have to. Once again, I've always worked, so that's I just couldn't, and I didn't have the faith or the ability to just sort of sit back. And I remember Howard Rollins, who we did a mini series, the Martin Luther King story, back in '77, I think it was. And Howard he would just refuse to, unless it was what he thought was, And then I think he did Ragtime and blew up, but he really chose his roles carefully. And I always admired that, but I never felt with family responsibility that I could just trust that. I just figure work will get work, and I just have to keep going. I know I'm giving you long answers here, but
no. It's really interesting, man. And that is kind of the opposite of what people expect, I guess. You do a film like that and you think then you're off to the races. And I thank you for being honest about that. That's a crazy thing that I just wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
Specifically, I mean, looking at your work and how much you've done, it doesn't feel like there was a gap there, but it's just, yeah, that's just the
Yeah.
opposite of what you'd expect. But
Yeah. And you find out probably because I always knew that, okay, I can't take anything for granted. I grew up in this religious sort of setting. My grandmother raised me. And so her whole thing was putting out your trust in man. You can't trust. If you're in an industry, you still can't trust necessarily. Don't put all of your trust in people because people will disappoint you. You trust the universal force, whatever you want to call that, and it will guide you, and it will also guide people into your life. And so when that sort of shuts down, I'm trusting that something else, the universe will protect and take care of me, and it always has. But sometimes there's been things that I didn't expect that to happen from those people, but it somehow allowed me to keep moving forward.
mm-hmm.
You know.
Wow. And I mean, to bring it up to modern day, as I said, like you've had an insane amount of credits. And at the moment, I mean, you've got three projects that are out. Well, the new Ghostbusters
Yeah.
is about to come out. You've got obviously
Yeah.
Quantum Leap, which is on
Right.
second season now.
The
Um,
second season. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
second season. And The Family Business, which I believe you produced, is also out. So I mean, you're doing all right. It's pretty
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
No,
pretty good. It's pretty
I,
good.
yeah, I'm not complaining, and I really feel very blessed when I look over the years, and I realize the people that I've worked with, um, and it's been great. I mean, I have great relationships with. Uh, I don't know any other profession, that I could have. I've traveled, shot in countries, around the world, and so that's been pretty amazing. But you're always sort of flying by the seat of your pants. You never know. I couldn't look down the line and say, "Oh, Ghostbusters is coming out in March, and then in June I'm going to." I have no idea. you know,
Yeah.
uh, who knows? I hope something exciting is going to happen in June. But I think as an actor, you almost need that because there are no. My son, we did Oz, the television series. He worked on that with me. He did a few movies. This was years ago, back in the '90s, early 2000s, and then he got married, and then he needed, or he felt he needed that kind of stability, so he got into corporate. Now he works. He got out of the business, but there's a part of you that you have to be able to ride that on that faith train, and not everybody can do that unless you have enough money where you don't really, it's a hobby and you just do it because you like it. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't come into this business with any money. I didn't come into this business with, any donor or even any mentor, that I could turn to and say, things are a little crazy right now. What do you think? And that's unfortunate. And I hope for people find someone who's doing what you're doing and try to connect. Well, I've never been able to get that kind of connection. I think probably having good advice from people who know. But once again, I sort of trust the universe
Mm.
will provide.
That
So.
kind of leads me on to what I was going to ask. Actually, I was going to say that. Do you have any advice? Being a mentor yourself, like what would you say to actors coming into the industry and trying to survive, trying to get those jobs?
Yeah, it's so I guess ultimately I have to say the only thing that I know is I think some say people say to me, uh, I've been struggling with this, just say for example, weight thing.
Hmm.
And I don't know what to do. I'm reading some books, I'm talking to some this, I'm going to see, but I always feel like there's a part of us that really knows what we need to do. You know what I mean? It's like you kind of know what you need to do. Now you don't like the idea of doing it because I always felt like for me to I never wanted to get overweight, so if I looked in the mirror and I wasn't happy, I just stop eating. Now, not everybody can do that, but I'm like, oh hell no, I'm not going to be that guy, you know. So if I would go on fast, but that's just how I dealt with it. But I think there's something that I would wake up in the morning and I would sort of after prayer or meditation, I thought of myself as if I can separate me, it's almost like a racehorse. Okay, there's a part of me, the actor part of me, that's the horse that just wants to play, and then there's a trainer part of me. So I got to be my own manager now. So what would I do if it wasn't me, and I had to say, okay, this is what you need to do. And so early on, I would get up and I'd send photos to agents and I'd do all kinds of stuff that I don't do now. But I think there's a part of us that kind of wants to guide us,
Mm.
but it's easy to get distracted. And I always felt alcohol or drugs or it might make the moment fun, but it always sort of takes you out of the game. And it takes a minute to kind of get back in. And I always felt like I would lose something. I remember when I was younger being in New York and I'd hang out till 4 in the morning, but I got to be on the set at 6. And
Mm.
so I show up at 6 and I say, oh, I'm still doing my job. But there's a little part you kind of go, yeah, but am I really showing up 100%? You know what I'm saying? So I think sometimes we feel you can get away with things.
Mm.
Well, I'm 78 years old now, and I see a lot of my friends who maybe party a little hardier than I did, now seeing the repercussions of, hips not working,
Mm.
joints, I never really, and because I had kids, I never really felt that was an example I wanted to set. I
Mm.
guess all I'm really saying is I think there's a common sense part of us that will guide us if we can quiet our minds down enough, trust enough to listen to that.
Mm.
And I believe it. I remember when I got married, I was in this, talked about my hometown, and my ex-wife was in a not a good home situation, and so to not say I didn't care, but I'm married to help get her out of that situation. Um, and then suddenly I realized that, oh my God, I'm 18 years old, I'm married, and this is my life. And I I don't, And so about 3 in the morning, I would just sort of try to meditate and pray and figure out what am I going to do. And I woke up. I remember in the middle of the night, and there's always been a part of me. It's kind of I won't say a voice because it's not a voice, but just sort of an aware something feels like a voice that would. There were times when I'd be out or be in some place and something would say, "You need to leave." You know what I mean? I don't question it. I just go, "Okay, I'm out of here. I got to go." I don't know why, but then later on I find out that things were happening that I avoided being a part of. But then that particular case, I woke up and there was this voice um, telling me to go downstairs and take the tube out of the back of the television, which didn't make any sense because I couldn't quite connect, but it was really clear. So
Mm.
I went downstairs, and back in those days, that the TV had those big boxes on the back, where they had all the tubes and things. And I opened the back up, and I took the tube out and closed it back up. And the next day, the television didn't work, and we had no money to get it fixed. And I didn't tell my wife. I'm not quite sure why I did it, but I was definitely, you know. And then this amazing thing happened because this girl that I married, who I really didn't know as well as I thought I did, we started to really talk. And when I had this job, I was working as kind of this janitor in this factory. Um, and I would come home, from work, and then we'd sit in front of the TV, and she'd cook, and we had those little TV trays, and we'd eat dinner until it was time to go to bed, and we went to bed, and I couldn't even tell you what I watched the night before, but that was kind of our lives. And when the TV went out, we just started to talk, and I found out she read books and I didn't, and she started me reading books and thinking about it, what if, and then we started to plan this, and suddenly our lives changed.
Oh, wow.
And I think sometimes things will come up and it doesn't make sense, but I guess all this is to answer your question. What would I say? To trust that part of you,
Mm,
you know, and there's an integral part of you that is your basic humanity, that is the most valuable thing you have, and you can't trade that for anything. Don't give up. That part of you is worth more than anything they'll ever offer you. So hold on to that. You know, don't give that up, because once you go down certain roads, you can't get back. So
mm,
just trust that the universe will conspire on your behalf.
mm, mm.
And I really believe that. In fact, that's all because like I said, I haven't had some super mentor. I haven't had a bunch of money. I haven't had any director who said, you're gonna be in all of my movies. I see it happen to other people, you know. But I trust that if I just basically listen to the comments and stuff,
Mm.
but trust that gut thing that tells you, yeah, you know,
That's great
um,
advice. Great
yeah,
advice. And also the advice of, not drinking, not partying too hard when you're younger and everything else. Because whatever elixir you're drinking, you're looking good,
yeah.
my friend. You're looking good for your age for sure. That's
Yeah,
solid.
because it will definitely show up. You know, it's like, oh my God, what is that? Well, that's that thing you did 25 years ago that you thought you got away with. You didn't get away with it,
Oh man.
you
And we've got to wrap up soon, so I just want to ask a few more questions. And
Sure.
see, talking about your latest projects as well, like Quantum Leap, taking on a project like that when the original series is so beloved. That's something that I grew up
Yeah.
with. I love the show. Was that a little bit daunting knowing that that was gonna kind of be a new thing and they were gonna try and because it's done
Yeah.
so well?
Yeah. No, well, I'm very happy to hear you say that, because I was a fan of Quantum Leap as well. And so yeah, you know, you want it to be, you know, it's got to be at a certain level. You know, it's a whole new cast, whole new sort of, and you hope the fans will give it a chance, and that they'll like it, and that they will want to watch it in enough numbers so that the studio will want to, you know, give it time to grow, because I think it has gotten better as we've sort of gotten into it. But yeah, there's always that caution. You don't want to go in and mess up something. Same thing with doing another Ghostbuster. If you can't bring something to it, why are you doing
Mm,
it? But but I think that you know, it's always a part of it. But I think I love this cast in Quantum Leap, and the production team. So I'm very, very proud of it. But I never know how people will. You know, that's the interesting thing about the industry. You know, who knows? I hope people. And now it's very difficult to get the ratings. You know, in the old days, you could just look at the Nielsen's and you see that your show came in number 6
yeah.
or whatever. Now with streaming, I hope people are watching it.
Mm,
You know, I meet people who really like the show. So, but I hope um, we'll get a chance to be around a while, and we can sort of fill in, because I think the original show left us sort of wanting more.
mm,
You know, the way that I was hoping that Scott Bakula would somehow be a part of it, and that didn't work out, or it hasn't worked out as yet. Maybe it might, but because I'm such a fan of his, and a fan of the original show, I think that would have been great. But in the meantime, you know, we do the best we can, and hopefully somebody will want to see it.
It looks great, man. It's on my list, and I'm gonna be watching it next. And also, I'm really excited for the new Ghostbusters as well. I can't wait for that.
Yeah.
And mate, this has been wicked. I really appreciate it, and thanks for taking the time. And yeah, this is a real privilege. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time, and man, I'm looking forward to us getting a chance to play together.
Yeah,
So,
let's do
you
it.
know,
100%. I'll tap you on the shoulder one day on set.
you got it. You got. Look forward to it. All right.
Brilliant. Thanks, man, and all the very best. And I
Thank
mean,
you.
good luck with all the shows, but I'm sure they're all going to do well, and next seasons will come, and
Yeah,
Ghostbusters can't wait, man.
and you too. You too. All right.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you to our guest Ernie, and thank you to East to West Collective. And as always, thank you to our sponsor, BetterHelp.